10 years. 1 decade. A tenth of a century, whatever you want to call it, however you choose to measure it. It's a long time. A long time to wait for something. A long time to say something you've been meaning to say. A long time to tell someone how much they meant to you. He was a big man. Not just in body, but in spirit. Larger than life itself, casting a benign and benevolent shadow over his loved ones. He'd film every Christmas, documenting the holiday and in turn leaving his family with proof of his love for them. I watched it recently. That was the most recent time I felt your presence. It was also the first time in 10 years that I cried. Because 10 years ago, I cut off my emotions. When you died, my tears died with you. I never saw you cry. Shedding a tear in front of you felt like a betrayal. When my sister came home and asked if I wanted to see you, or if I wanted to remember you as I always saw you, sitting in your chair, leaning back and watching TV, I chose the former. I wanted to see you before you passed. I needed to. And as we drove to the hospital, I thought it strange that I wasn't crying. This would be my last time seeing you. Why were my eyes dry? But when I saw you, staring wide-eyed at the ceiling, breathing mask on, arms still at your sides, still living, less because of your health and more to do with how stubborn you were, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I cried. I buried my head into my mother's sleeve and I cried. And then I stopped crying for 10 years. But it's not about me. It's about him. As he laid there, surrounded by his loved ones, I'm sure he felt at ease. He may have been in pain, but it wasn't his time to bear it alone. The machine keeping him alive made steady noises, pulsing slowly, giving more life to a man who by all accounts was already dead. But he pushed on, maybe not by choice, but by principle. His family were there, his daughter, her husband, his grandchildren, and perhaps most important, his wife. It was for them that he kept alive. It was for them that he pushed his broken body to the limits. It was for them that, even in this sorry state, he lived on. And even now, 10 years after the fact, he still lives on. Maybe not physically, but in spirit. He's there with us, forever watching, forever loving, forever caring, and he'll never stop. Come hell or high water, he'll keep watching and loving us from above, because that's the kind of man he was, and that's the kind of man he is. Marion George Wilde, my grandfather. I have no idea why it took me 10 years to admit how much you meant to me, but you don't have to wait anymore because I'm saying it now. You were as good a grandfather as anyone could hope for. You put up with hardships. You put up with everything that was thrown at you, and you stood your ground, never once flinching in the face of the world. And you were loved for it. Nothing will change the way your family remembers you. Fondly, dearly, happily. We all love and miss you, but one by one, when each of our days come, we'll join you in heaven where you so rightfully belong. Rest easy, Papa. The angels will take care of you. But wait, that's not the end of the story. There was someone else, a life just as precious, just as weathered. And when you passed, they were left behind, perhaps more than any of us. My grandmother, God rest her soul, kept living without you. It wasn't easy. She fought with everything she had, but life is an unforgiving monster. Sickness ravaged her, even as an illness she was born with took away her mobility bit by bit. I remember her using a cane from 2 legs to 3, then a walker from 3 legs to 6, then a chair from 6 legs down to 4, but none of them were her own. Permanently grounded and mistreated by gravity, the falls began to start, and we made the choice we never wanted to. We put her in a nursing home, She didn't argue. She knew it was the only way. She wasn't happy about it, but life is an unforgiving monster. I would sit by her side and talk to her. Sometimes I'd enter her room and see her staring out the window. The world was out there. But it wasn't her world. No, her world was in here, confined within 4 walls and a hallway. Her world extended from her bed to the door. And again, sickness ravaged her. So we moved her again. A larger facility, but closer to a hospital. At this point, her illness had become so serious that she told my sister she was wishing for death. But it seems death is the same kind of unforgiving monster that life is, because it ignored her wishes. She recovered from the sickness, but never everything else. Her mind went. She began to talk about work. She called one of her sons, my uncle, and asked if he could pick her up from work. "You're in a nursing home, Mom." The words didn't sink in. "No, I'm not. I'm at work." "Mom, you're in a nursing home." Again, it didn't stick. "Well, if you're not going to come pick me up, I'll just call your father." In the next few days, I guess she got in contact with him. She called another one of her sons and told him that Daddy was coming to pick her up. Daddy. Not her father. His. Her husband. My grandfather. 10 years. 1 decade, a 10th of a century, whatever you want to call it, however you choose to measure it, it's a long time. But to the power of love, it's mere moments. And now, eternity is theirs. They're back together, free of pain, free of sickness, free of age and limitations, because while life is an unforgiving monster, the afterlife will reward you for your struggles.